Now, one of the questions that we get asked the most is, how do I get started with my business idea? It's one of the most challenging things that anybody has to do, is go from an idea to actually testing it in market and seeing if the business has real traction and can actually succeed. Now, books like The Lean Startup, like Sprint, and like The Innovator's Dilemma, and all these great books are really good at kind of telling you what to do, but they don't really show you exactly how to go about doing it. So what we're going to do today is, we're really lucky because Nick has just literally done exactly this. He's taken an idea from zero through to, well, a point that he's going to tell you about in a couple of minutes. And we're going to find out exactly what he did to turn his idea from nothing into something that might just work. So Nick, tell us what's going on. Tell us how you've done it. Let's get going.
I just want to say that was a fantastic intro. Can I just stop for a moment and just say, wow. I would do like a slow clap and just be like, great intro. Well done, Spencer. Excellent start. That's a great start to episode 32 of the Spen Nick Show. So well done.
But what we've got to remember here is, you've just been literally writing down everything that you've done for the last 10 minutes. So I've been practicing that intro over and over in my head for the same amount of time. So, but before we talk about exactly what you've done, let's just set the context. Where is this idea now? Let's talk about exactly where you are so that we can understand what we need to do in order to get to this point again. So where exactly is this business idea right now?
Okay, so where we are right now is, I've managed to have one sign up from my landing page from a person that I've never met before in my life. And that was from 35 page views of the website. Quite exciting though, because I've never had anyone that's never met me, never known anything about me, buy a product from me. Although I will point out that I just had a registration page, so she hasn't paid me yet, which is not complete validation, but still it's looking strong.
It's a milestone. It's a major milestone. That is something you've got to hold precious. There's another milestone coming for sure, but that's awesome. Fantastic. So why don't you tell us how we got there?
Okay, so this whole thing happened when the pandemic happened, right, with COVID-19 coronavirus. So what was happening was, everyone was having to go into lockdown and therefore work from home. And with this, people were starting to have a lot more online meetings, whether it was via Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Google Meet. And what they realized was that actually they don't really know how to do it. They're not very comfortable doing it, because although a lot of people were used to it, so many more people were not yet used to properly working from home. And so this was a big change that people needed to make. And so before, like working from home and using these kind of tools, it was a nice to have. It was something that a lot of people liked doing, or they thought it was a nice kind of toy, but not as good as face-to-face, basically. You know, I'm not saying this for everyone, but there was a lot of people were thinking this. And so then what happened was, because of COVID-19, because they were at home, they had no choice. They had to do online meetings and online workshops. And so what they needed to do was find ways to get comfortable using the technology fast. But then also after that, and a second problem, is to make their meetings and workshops online, the virtual ones, way more interactive and engaging. Okay, because that was something that they felt that it wasn't human, or it wasn't as personal. But they had to find ways to make it that way. Otherwise, it can be boring and also really tiring when you're on those calls all day.
Yeah. So just to clarify on this problem, just to clarify and zoom in a little bit, because I remember when everybody started going onto Zoom, there was some hilarious stories of people that were doing wildly inappropriate things, not realizing their camera's on or their audio is still rolling, and they're going to the toilet or doing some even worse things, or they're walking around naked, or there's people in the background that shouldn't be there. And so we're not talking about...
That was just you. That was just you on a Tuesday.
That was just me. But we're not talking about that kind of stuff. We're talking more about getting the best out of Zoom, out of these online experiences, and trying to actually make them perhaps even better than a face-to-face experience, right?
Yeah, exactly. Particularly for trainers, facilitators who run a lot of workshops. they really wanted to find ways to engage their participants rather than just having it, I'm going to talk down the camera lens or the webcam lens, and hopefully people will be listening, but actually probably they haven't got their webcams on, and they're probably doing the washing while they're also listening to me, while they're also answering emails, while they're also on Instagram. And so this is not a optimum environment for learning for online workshops. And for meetings, it's just as bad, because you've got 20 people on a meeting that the meeting didn't need to exist in the first place, and no one's really listening because they're like, why have I been invited to this meeting? And it's just someone talking about the boring same old stuff, and there's no actions or next steps, and it's all just a mess. And at the end of it, they say, well, what this whole virtual remote meetings thing, it doesn't work.
Yep. I've seen that so many times. So cool. It sounds like a very poignant problem that for something like this, you've got to be quick, because you know that there's going to be a lot of people trying to do similar kind of things. I remember when we did a show about how to use Zoom in a really effective way, and then I'd look around and like everyone's doing LinkedIn posts about how to get the best, make the best Zoom things. So you've got to be pretty quick in making sure that you kind of attack this at the right time. So tell us what you did, the specific things, and let's get as specific as you can. Let's get to really understand what was going on in that time.
Okay, yeah, no, I think this is really good. Let's lift the bonnet up and I'll show you everything that I've got. So
we want to see you fully naked. I mean, not you.
The business idea.
Lifting the bonnet is a way better picture.
Let's edit that bit out. Okay.
No way.
In my day job, I run training, but I also facilitate teacher training or help trainers learn how to deliver workshops. And as part of that, I have to help them do it online. And so what I did was I started creating some kind of like mini workshop sessions where you could almost call them actually focus groups in effect, where I was finding out what all the major challenges were that the facilitators I was supposed to be supporting had. And what I did was first of all, get them to, on a virtual whiteboard, write on sticky notes, put all their challenges down. And then what I did was I just grouped them and then circled all the different groups. They fell mainly into three buckets, the problems that they had. One was technology, like getting comfortable using the technology to deliver your online workshops. Two was people, so how do you interact with people and make it more engaging? And number three was content. How do you bring the content to life, and how can you tweak it so that it works better online? So I was going through those three main challenges, and then afterwards, once I'd grouped them, I'd just go around and answer them all. And I did this probably about 10 times to over 100 people. So this is more research than pretty much anyone does. Like, most people won't go into that much detail. So I had a really good understanding of the challenges that facilitators and trainers were having in delivering online workshops.
I love this, and I think there's a couple of points that I think are worth underscoring. The first one is, as you just said, getting the opportunity to speak to 100 people about their challenges and their problems is actually a really unique opportunity. And a lot of people either don't have that opportunity in the first place or don't capitalize on that opportunity is the second thing. So I think that first thing that you did was amazing. You're not going them with an already half-baked solution. You're not going to them with your problems and you're trying to validate that they've got those same problems. You're just going, look, what do you find challenging? And I think that's a really amazing way to really get into the detail on what those people's challenges are. I think the second thing is that when I talk about how do you find ideas, the majority of startups actually emerge out of the current working practices or problems that people have in their own working lives, usually in their working lives. So they're usually in the same industry that you've worked in because you've got that experience. This is clearly perfectly around what it is that you do. You're about facilitation. It's about talking to camera a lot and then finding out other people's doing because that's exploding. It used to be a very small number of people that were doing these things. Now it's exploding and it's become something that everybody needs to do. So there's a real opportunity. So I think that observation, understanding people's problems, and then capitalizing on that opportunity to talk to 100 people is an incredible thing to be doing. That's what everybody listening needs to be doing when they're starting to kind of understand or starting to think that there are a couple of problems or they're starting to get an idea about what they could be doing.
And I think that's such a good point. I didn't try to create a solution. I went and spoke to them, asking them for their issues, and then I knew I had the answers already, so I gave them answers, but I didn't actually have like a workshop developed for them that would give them the answers, because I didn't know what questions they were going to ask or what problems they had. So I think my approach worked really, really well in just trying to get them to give me problems because they felt heard, and then I gave them just loads of like handy tips straight away as a first start. That's an MVP. I tell you what, a minimum viable product is just giving people the answers they need to be able to move forward. So that worked really well, and I've never thought of it that way before, to be honest, actually, as an MVP.
And it is because you're solving the solution for someone, you're giving them what they need to hear. So they're still moving from point A to point B. They're getting the win. It's done in a non-scalable way as well, which is something that Y Combinator, Paul Graham talk about a lot. Build something that can't be scaled to start with, so you really understand that problem, and you kind of almost create a bit of a moat around it, this kind of special thing that you can do, then figure out how to scale it, and then figure out what the actual product that comes out of it essentially is. So essentially, again, you kind of created a service business, although you weren't getting paid for it as a separate business. You kind of created this service for people, which is very labor intensive, almost one-to-one or one to a couple. And then hopefully you're going to talk about what you did from that point to get it to a bigger stage.
Yeah, so I suppose the scaling started with writing all the questions up, first of all, and that ended up being 2,500 words of questions. And then what I did was I wrote my answers to those questions and ordered it into, put it in a structure, which was, in this case, what do you have to do before a workshop, during a workshop, and after a workshop, and then had those 3 buckets of people, technology, and content. So with that, I've got a 12,000 word ebook that I put together, and I wrote that probably in about 8 days. I think it took me to write that. Which is the fastest I've ever written 12,000 words before. I don't think I've actually ever written 12,000 words. So that was good fun.
That's great going, yeah. And I suppose, again, because you knew the answers, you knew what you were going to write, it's just a matter of sitting, going through those hours, churning out that content as quickly as you can to get it out there as quick, Again, this thing that we talk about quite often, get it out of your head onto paper, which means you can see it much better. It means you can start to visualize it and you can get it all to actually do something. I think that's a great thing to do.
Definitely, because I think it kind of goes against the whole MVP thing where you're spending 8 days on something. But I think in this case, because it's a knowledge service or a knowledge product that I'm creating, I felt like I needed to know what I know, and I didn't know what I knew. But now I know exactly what I know, and I know the entirety of the problem, and I know the entirety of my solution as it is. So that was a really useful exercise.
And for me, the point, it's a really interesting question about whether that's an MVP, whether that goes against the idea of an MVP. There is this spectrum of different people's perspectives on what an MVP really is. And some people, it's very much like, what's the quickest thing that I can do in half an hour to get something out there? Other people are like, what's the quickest thing I can do with £500,000 of budget and a team of 20 people and 3 months of runway? And it's everything in between those two spectrums. But it doesn't really matter to me how big it is and how much money you spend and how long it takes. What matters is the value of the learning that you go through when you test that MVP. So I really want to hear that you tested it and you got some great learnings from it, because if you did, that means it's a valid MVP, in my opinion.
And it's just coming to my mind now. What it was if we're talking about build, measure, learn, and I love that you've got the book right there, The Lean Startup. If we're talking about build, measure, learn, what I did was I built a focus group workshop. And then, I organised the focus group essentially, but the first half of the session was focus group. The second half was giving them answers to the questions that they had in that focus group. And I asked some questions as well, because I suppose in a focus group, normally you're the one asking the questions, but I got them to ask me the questions. So then I gave them the answers. So the giving them the answers was the building of the solution. Then the measurement was was also part of the asking questions and getting or finding out what their questions were as well. So it was almost like measure, build, learn. I did it the opposite way around. I collected their questions. Then what I did was I and assessed their questions. Then I created a minimum viable product of responses. Then what I did was my learning phase was essentially the writing of the PDF, collecting all of the information that I had, because I didn't even know what my answers were until I answered them. So it was about collecting all of that together in a document. And maybe that's actually what you need to do. Anyone listening to this needs to do as well as part of the process, perhaps.
It's a really good point. I think it's always, in the book, it's always talked as the build, measure, learn feedback loop. And when people talk about it, it's always build, measure, learn. I often think it starts with learn, actually, and I think it could start with measure as well. So I don't think it's set in stone that it has to be something that you build straight away. I think there has to have been some kind of learning, some kind of insight that you have to have in order to build something in the first place. So I don't think it matters which order you do it. It's all valid if it gets you to the point where it's viable.
And this is a really interesting point, because David Bland supports what you're saying now. And he actually says that the biggest mistake that people make in relation to lean startup, or the biggest confusion they have, is they think what it means is not build, measure, learn. What happens is they get stuck in build, 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 and they never get to the measure. So what you need to do is make sure that you get out of the building as quickly as possible and test. So that's what I did there.
And we've talked about that from a future builder's perspective as well. So just to pull it back to some of the things that we've talked about in terms of the failures that I had with building future builders, that very first thing that we did, we didn't do any learning, any measurement before we built something. We built it and then realized it wasn't going to fail. It was going to fail. It wasn't going to work. Anyway, on to your next stage. So if we do a very quick recap, we've had these amazing focus groups, essentially with hundreds of people. You've been testing the problem, but also at the same time starting to develop what your ideas around the solution might be in a very labor-intensive way, really, not as a full product or more as a service, I guess. And then you've gone ahead and you've digested all of that. You've written out all the questions that people had, all the challenges. You've started to answer all of those and producing essentially an ebook over about 8 days. And then presumably you've done some kind of testing with that ebook as well.
Well, what I then did was a separate client asked me to do facilitator training for their trainers. So I had about 35 different trainers that I created a 90-minute workshop for, which was, again, I call it a workshop, but it was more of a presentation where I presented an approach to delivering online workshops. And what was interesting was I delivered it twice and then got feedback on it. And so the feedback has been really helpful in things that I can do to improve it, but also it shows that it's positive, because I asked them, would you recommend this to a friend? And all of the answers were between 8 and 10. Mostly between 9 and 10, but there were a couple of 8s, or a few 8s. So I think that shows that there's some kind of support for the solution that I'm creating. Because now what the next step is to do is to turn it into an online course. Because I could continue selling it to other clients as a workshop, and there's a significant validation there because I've done it already now. So this is a business. This potentially could be a business in itself. But what I'm more excited about.
Have you made money? Have you made money?
Yes,
on this yet?
I got paid 1,000 euros for 2 90-minute workshops. So
then it's no longer potentially a business. This is a business. That for me is a measure of a business. Are you revenue generating? You are cash flow positive. You're revenue generating. That's a business. So
exactly,
mate, that's
so
another mark. It's another milestone.
Another mark. That's huge. That's another milestone. So that's huge. And then this, which is exciting, but that's the business that I'm in, and I've been in for a long time. So I always felt comfortable with that. I always thought that could work very quickly. But what's been really exciting was then I wanted to make it an online course. And so this is where what I've done now is created, again, the easy thing to do here is just to start making the videos. But what I've not done, and I'm desperate to make the videos. You know, I've got all the equipment, I've got the lighting, I've got the blue backdrop.
All the equipment. All the equipment. You should see his flat at the moment. It's stacked full of lighting rigs and all these.
I brought the studio,
it's a studio.
To studio flat.
Yeah.
And so then I haven't used it though. I've made sure I really wanted to use it, and I haven't made any videos with it because I've been focused on writing the ebook and then creating the landing page. But this is the exciting thing. All I've done is post it on LinkedIn and had, well, as of yesterday, I had 1,000 people view that link, and then 35 people go onto the landing page and one person register. I haven't set it up with bank account details yet, but that person I don't know, but they're the perfect person, having done a bit of a check of who they are. They work for an agency, and they seem to be a facilitator or a consultant. So they seem like the perfect person that I'm looking for to help with this course. And they validated my price because they haven't paid yet. So this is not complete validation, because it's not complete validation until they pay. But they've clicked the button, which it feels like the next stage should be entering your payment details. So I feel like there's quite a lot of validation there that they like it. However, this is only one person. I want to get 10 people signed up to be able to do the course. So
talk me through that funnel again. So with anything like this, you've got a funnel. You've got how many people have seen the link. So how many views have you had, if you like?
So
what was that? 1,000.
I had 1,000. I've had a bit more now, but from when the first sign up happened, I had 1,000 people view the LinkedIn post.
Yeah.
I had 35 people then go to the next phase of the funnel, which was go to the landing page.
So clicked on the landing page. So hit the landing page. Yeah.
The conversion was one person has then clicked on register and given me their email address and their name. So
okay, cool.
This is exciting because I've never done this for an online product before. All my other services have been either face-to-face consulting or even online consulting services, but not an online course. So this is fun.
So if you look at those numbers, there's a couple of things that you could be doing in order to try to get to that magic number of 10, which is at the point that you think you can realistically build this course, you'll be making a bit of money and servicing everyone's needs, those 10 people that need it. You have to grow the top of the funnel, you have to grow the middle of the funnel, or you have to make those conversions on site up. You need to get those back up there. So you could start to target the top of the funnel, get more people to see the link that you want. That could be with ads, it could be pushing through other social platforms, it could be a whole load of other ways,
maybe
using
content.
some kind of affiliate, making more content, some kind of affiliate program, all those kind of things. You could then try to improve on what that ad conversion looks like, or what the structure of the message looks like, to make sure people are clicking on it, make that a bit more of an attractive thing. Or we could start to do some work on that landing page and get the conversions on the landing page up there. Now, I think you could probably do some work without looking at it right now, but probably do some work in all three of those areas to try to maximize those conversions.
Definitely.
How does that sound?
I think, and exactly, and that's where we're at now. So I think that's a really good summary of what my next steps can be. So that's where we're at, really, and I think that's all we really wanted to cover for today. But hopefully that brings to life a lot of the lean startup principles that we often talk about, and helps, I think gives a slightly different example for people to look at, because often it's software, but this is a bit different.
Now, let's just do a really quick summary on those top bullet points of the things that you did that other people could perhaps emulate as well, and turn it from just an idea that's festering away in their head to something which actually is a business and it could work. What are those the bullet points of the things that you did again?
Number one is identify a problem that people have that you want to help solve. Number two is speak to those people that potentially have that problem and ask them what are their main challenges, and maybe even discuss what potential solutions could look like, but be careful about that, depending on what your product will be. In my case, it made sense because it was giving advice, so it made sense, but it doesn't always make sense to talk about the solution in focus groups, so be careful. Then I wrote up my notes into a PDF, into an ebook, and then what I did was I did 2 workshops, got a client and did 2 workshops based off of that content, and did it for my target client customers that were in that workshop. Then I created a landing page for the online course, and then posted it on social media, and then got one registration for the workshop. So that's what I've done so far.
And that's amazing. And this is with no real money invested. This is just taking hard work, bit of planning, bit of getting in there and actually doing stuff, right? And you're starting to prove out this validation and validating this idea, which is absolutely brilliant. We would love to hear your thoughts about all of this. Of course, Nick would definitely like to hear your thoughts. I would also like to hear these thoughts, partly because now that Nick's getting somewhere with this, I think I might try and help him a bit more, get involved, worm my way in there a little bit and see if I can be part of it. Obviously to help you make it even better, but maybe there's some money coming my way. Always hustling.
Definitely, absolutely.
Tell us what you think. Give us some comments down below. Like, subscribe, do all the usual things that we ask you. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, all those great things. It really, really does help us. Anything else to say? Anything you want to add?
What I'll do is I'll add a link to the landing page in the description as well. So you don't have to sign up for it, but you can look at what I've done so that you could copy it or learn from it for your own landing pages.
Fantastic. Pure 100% value every single step of the way with Spen and
value,
Nick.
just spraying value everywhere.
Everywhere.
That was a money gun that I was doing there, by the way.
That's the money gun. Mate, awesome as ever. This is a super exciting ride. Hopefully, everyone's going to love it. Let's leave it there, shall we?
Thank you very
Until
much.
next time.
This has been good fun. See you next time. See you later, everyone.
See you later.
Cool. That was fun.